Hello, my name is Mr. Goulden. I teach 7th grade English, 7th grade Writers Workshop, 8th grade Writers Workshop, and speech here at the Barstow School in Kansas City, Missouri, 64114.
I'm Kelsey Tucker and I'm in 8th grade.
Hi, I'm Sophia Gilchrist. I'm an 8th grader at the Barstow School, and yeah.
Lisa Tillema, and I teach 6th grade English and Writers Workshop.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Warren. I'm in the 8th grade.
My name is Ms. Zimmerman, and I teach freshman English as well as half of the senior English students at Barstow.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Padford, and I teach middle school at the Barstow School, and this is my 18th year of teaching. I've taught geography, Spanish, ukulele, a creativity course, and for the last several years I've taught Writers Workshop in 7th grade.
My favorite short story writer is Bethany Hagen. We read some of her short stories in class, and I really like her work. It's really relatable and modern and funny.
My favorite short story author is Natalie Parker.
I like Ray Bradbury.
I really like several short story authors. The first ones that pop into my head are Jim Shepard and George Saunders, and I really like Stephen King short stories as well.
Well, I would say my favorite short story is called Chopin in Winter by Stuart Dybek, who's a Chicago writer, a writer from Chicago. So I guess I would call him my favorite short story author.
I actually really enjoy Herman Melville. It's good short stories.
Ray Bradbury, and perhaps, I guess, Edgar Allan Poe would be good short story authors that come to mind.
My favorite short story is They Called Us by Natalie Parker.
All Summer in a Day.
My goodness. Actually, I think O. Henry's The Gift of the Magi is a really good one.
I really like The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, who's the famous author of Fahrenheit 451, and it was a really good book, and I never knew that he wrote short stories, and I read that one, and it was really good, so I think that everyone should read it.
Blood Red Rose.
That's an impossible question for an English teacher to ask, but I think one that I enjoyed the most that I've read in the last few years is a Jim Shepard short story called Tedford and the Megalodon, which is about this guy who travels into the Antarctic to find a giant prehistoric shark. And it sounds like just an adventure story, but it's actually really beautifully written and very thoughtful.
Because they're important. That's like the last thing, like, why should we care about books? Like, they're important, it's relatable, it's something that you can do other than just like sitting on your phone all the time.
I think that short stories are important because they are very detail oriented. You can get a lot said and accomplished by the word choice in a short amount of time. So that means that they're concise, and I like that they're concise. They can be exhilarating. I like that on short stories. I also like that they can be very direct and they're focused, whereas sometimes we read these other longer novels, they kind of take us off all these different places, and a short story just is right there.
I think that short stories are a lot like poetry in that the authors of good short stories condense a lot of really important ideas into a very small space. The best short stories, I think, leave you wondering what just happened, and you can read them and read them and read them and analyze them and think about them and discuss them and never be quite sure what the one true answer is. I like that about short stories. And you can read a lot of them in a pretty quick amount of time. So I read The Dinner Party by Joshua Ferris, who's one of my favorite authors, and it's just a collection of short stories. And what I like about that is that some of them will hit and some of them will miss, but you can just sort of move on. So within that collection, I think there were 3 or 4 that I really loved, and then probably 3 or 4 that I hated, and then quite a few that were sort of in the middle there. But unlike a novel, you can read a short story quickly, you can think about it, but then move on. It sort of frees you up to move on with your life. I think any form of reading is positive, especially at this age for middle schoolers. I don't think there's such a thing as bad reading. Currently, I'm reading the Ms. Marvel comic book series. I think it's awesome. I mean, I love Ms. Marvel. If I had read that as a middle schooler, she probably would have been my hero. She's kind of my hero now. So I don't think if your interests are in graphic novels or comic books or poetry or short stories or novels or even essays and nonfiction, there's no such thing as bad reading, particularly at this age. Any kind of reading, I think, is helpful. And I think the primary reason that reading is so important is that, as a lot of research has demonstrated, it helps people develop empathy. It lets them experience in a safe environment what other people live through and experience in the what David Foster Wallace would call skull-sized kingdom in our heads. We get to try on new ideas and new experiences and new ways of looking at the world, and you can experience those things through literature in ways that you couldn't otherwise.
They're important because they convey a powerful message in only a few pages, and they can help you get through problems if you don't really have anyone to talk to.
I think short stories, we only get so many minutes and hours on this planet, and we want to access as much good literature as possible while we're here. So short stories give you a way into lots of different authors' perspectives a little more efficiently than you can access them with a novel. But also, a short story is a more compact and different form than a novel, and can sometimes have a punch, an immediacy that's hard to sustain over the course of an entire book.
Short stories are really important because it gives an overall message for people of any age, and lets you go into another world for just a little bit of time and teaches you a lot of things that you might not have known.
I think short stories are really valuable as a genre, probably more so now than in other times, just because of time. You can read a short story quickly. You can you can dive into the story and the characters a lot faster than you can in a novel that might take you weeks and weeks to read. So I think the idea of being able to get into something, share a story, and get a lot out of it in a short amount of time, nowadays that's pretty important.
Well, yeah, I think every genre is important, especially short stories, again, because they send a message to people of all age, especially children when they are on technology all the time. Maybe even just like opening Safari and reading someone's short story will really help, and by like just learning a little bit or reading just more than you're on social media or something. I don't have a specific one, but Blood Red Rose is a good one. Anything by Herman Melville, really, or Ray Bradbury.
Definitely They Called Us.
Becky by Jean Toomer. That's a short story that I teach during my Harlem Renaissance unit. It's short, it's very short, but it's about a woman who is a social pariah. She's an outcast in her town. Literally, they cast her out of her town, and she lives on the outskirts of town by the railroad tracks. But then the townspeople sort of feel guilty about that decision, so they surreptitiously take care of her. They give her food and check on her. But all of that is because of her, the fact that she has sons. She is white, but she has sons who are African American or of mixed racial heritage. And the story is set in the early 20th century in the South. So that the fact that she's had children with an African American man who no one knows is very controversial. So the story, in a very succinct amount of time, grapples with questions of race and identity and empathy in a really powerful way, and in a way I think that still resonates. So I would recommend that. Becky by Jean Toomer.
Not enough.
That's a good question. I don't have any data to support an answer on that one. Well, if you think about things like the best American short stories, so every year they come out with the best American short stories. It's a collection, and it's they come out with it every year. It's an anthology. I think that would indicate that there's a market for it. Otherwise, why would they do it year after year? I think they've been doing that for at least 10 years. I think approaching it from an educator, every English teacher that I know teaches short stories. So in that way, I know that at least students are being assigned short stories to read. I don't know how many middle school students read short stories on their own in their free time. Probably not a lot.
I really don't think that many people read short stories unless they're like fanfic. Because I know that like if I'm like looking online and I just like short stories, it's literally going to be like 90% fanfic. So I really think that like there's like a group of specific people that like short stories, and there's like everyone else just kind of like, okay, they're okay.
Well, in high school, I hope 100%. Adults, much fewer. I think a lot fewer adults read for pleasure, and of those, I think very few remember that short stories are an option, which is a shame because short stories are a pretty ideal form for busy adults to read because you can read it, put it away, pick up another one, read it, put it away.
Gosh, I would guess not that many. I just don't think that it's something that is that common. I think people are into novels. I think that novels actually have gotten a lot longer nowadays. You think about Harry Potter or like the Twilight series or, all of those, it feels like novels are getting huge and people are speeding through those, but I just don't think then that short stories have been that popular.
I think basically the majority of people who do read short stories are students that are made to read short stories. I wish that they were out there more and more adults would enjoy them.
Yeah.
But I really think it's basically students.
I actually know this one. It's like 9.6% of people read short stories or something.
It is a fictional story that is compact, spans only a few pages, and is therefore sort of economical in its subject matter in a way that a novel can't be.
So I would say that my definition of a short story is just kind of like a book that's condensed into like a couple paragraphs, like short paragraphs or like a couple pages. Not really necessarily like a novel, but not really like a paragraph. It's just kind of like in between.
I think the best short stories are pieces of literature that do all the same things that a novel does in a very compact and concise way. So you have major characters, you have plot development, you have some sort of conflict that drives the plot forward, and then you have some kind of resolution. And I think short stories that resonate, that stick with readers, are the ones where you don't see the resolution coming, or maybe the resolution isn't what you predicted, or it's not satisfying, but it keeps you thinking. Some some of my favorite short stories are the ones that kind of frustrate me, like what just happened, or I did not see that coming, or who is that very old man in the backyard and why does he have wings?
But they also have one main and powerful meaning behind them, whereas sometimes books don't always have a huge message behind them.
My definition of a short story is a piece of work that is concise, that goes through and gives a lot of detail. It is also one that pulls a reader in immediately, so they have to have that good hook to bring that reader in, but then it also keeps them engaged throughout. What's nice about a short story is you can get through a short story and you feel like you've accomplished something in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oof. A short story is short and sweet and teaches you a lot.
I think a short story is a complete, it's a complete package in, I guess, I don't know, less than 50 pages maybe.
Go read a short story.
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 You can help us save them from extinction.
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 You can help save them from extinction.